All right, welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Thursday evening. Hope you guys are off to a great start. Well, I guess it's not off to a great start. It's the end of most of your all's day at this point in time. I'm all turned around because there's a million things going on. There's Titans free agency. I've been at the SEC tournament all day. In the meantime, this has been something that's in the works for, obviously since Mike Keith left the Tennessee Titans. The search to find the next voice of the Tennessee Titans has been ongoing. And that was a pretty dramatic loss for you guys, understandably so. 27 years with one play-by-play guy, especially for all the things that Mike did. It's not more important to you than Ran Carthon being fired, for example, or Derrick Henry going to the Baltimore Ravens. But it's one of those things that really hit home for a lot of you guys because change happens. We all go through it. We all go through it in life and in our professions, in our day-to-day. And most people don't like change, especially when it's the familiarity of the voice in your head. And that's what Mike Keith was for so many of you for 27 seasons as the voice of the Tennessee Titans. But now it's time for a new voice of the Tennessee Titans because Mike is off to better and bigger pastures with the Voice of the Vols gig, and I know he's super excited about it, and I know he's incredibly grateful to the Titans organization, the Titans fans, and all these different things, but it was just right place, right time for Mike Keith at 57 years old while he's still young enough. I know 57 is not super young, but still young enough to do that job at a really high level because Mike's still got a lot of juice left. But the team that he was working for didn't. The Titans are going to be in a tough position for a little while. We'll see how long. And obviously, the potential to draft Cam Ward can turn those fortunes around sooner rather than later if they do this thing correctly, which also is in play given their backup quarterback signing today. But I don't think that's as important as the news that there are a couple of people. And really, I think it's one person that's going to end up being who's going to end up getting the job for this. But they've at least talked about narrowing it down to two candidates. And I really think that they've made up their mind on one. It's just a matter of working through the process of getting that individual here. So we're going to talk about the two potential replacements for Mike Keith. We'll touch on the free agent signing that they made today with the backup quarterback position. We'll get to a weekend bounce back at the end of the show. Before we get started, we need you guys to share the broadcast around on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Wherever you are spending your time with us, you are welcome to dive in however it is that you share the show, and you can share the show wherever you want to. If you're on Twitter, please retweet. If you're on Facebook Live, you can share now to public. And if you are on Facebook, if you're on YouTube or Twitch, you can like the video, subscribe to the channel. While you're there, text the link to a friend. If you're feeling frisky, we always appreciate your participation in sharing the broadcast around. So with all that said, we will dive in together. I know you guys are interested in this because this is a pretty important move for Titans fans especially. Not a lot of reasons to get excited about the team, but a change in the broadcast is going to be something that a lot of people, a lot of Titans fans are paying very close attention to because let's start here. There's simply no replacing Mike Keith. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. I'm proud as always to be presented to you by the wonderful folks at Zen Sports. Promo code ATOZTN. You can bet college basketball, hockey, the NBA, all of your favorite major sports available to you at zensports.com. Of course, Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer, online at tworiversford.com for more information. Quality American-made Ford vehicles and award-winning customer service is what they offer. By TrueMath Fitness in the Gulch, your first workout is free. As a Middle Tennessee resident, no workout ever recycled or repeated. Just the best in the business at TrueMathFitness.com. And, of course, the great folks at Bart Durham Injury Law, because if you've been in an automobile accident or have suffered a personal injury, you deserve to be paid. And BartDurham.com is where you go. So there's a lot of different layers to this because it's a complicated thing. If you talk to, I would argue 25 of the 32 other NFL markets, people are probably not that hung up on who their play-by-play voice is. But Mike Keith was very unique for all the reasons that you know. He's a broadcasting icon, first and foremost, Mike Keith. And when the news of him broke, Well, first, when the news that Bob Kessling was retiring from the voice of the Vols position, the first thought beyond, I really like Bob, and Bob's done a great job for, I don't know, what, a quarter of a century at this point in time, being the voice of the Vols. And he obviously took that mantle from John Ward, and that was no easy task. Of course, when you talk about replacing broadcasting icons, you understand what a level of impact John Ward still has on Tennessee sports fans across the state. John Ward is an icon. Bob Kessling is an icon. Mike Keith, though, maybe it's because I'm biased and I've worked with Mike and I've enjoyed talking to Mike and I'm privileged to be able to call Mike Keith my friend, and I can't wait to see what he does for Tennessee. I'm grateful that we don't lose him entirely in our lives, because he'll still be on 104.5 The Zone, just the voice of the Vols instead of the voice of the Titans on Saturdays as opposed to Sundays. But there's no question that he is an icon in this state. And really, there's not another Mike Keith in the local NFL broadcast team business. 3 decades. 3 decades is almost 3 decades is how long he's doing it. And Bob Kessling, who is going to retire after this basketball season, has put in a lot of great work. But Mike Keith, I think, and with all due respect to Bob, I think that Mike Keith is going to bring a lot of juice to that broadcast booth, and I can't wait to hear it. But now becomes the process, or now has been the process, of replacing him. And I don't know how wide their search ended up being, but what I know now is that they've narrowed it down to 2 candidates in particular, 3 who were being considered, but 2 candidates who were really on the table, and one who I think they're ultimately going to offer the job to. So with all that said, my question, your 2 Rivers Ford take here this evening, is this. Who would you like to have replaced Mike Keith as the voice of the Vols? Let me know in the comment section on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. If you want to get involved there, we'd be happy to have you. Who would have been your pick to replace Mike Keith to be the voice of the Titans? Brandon, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, but Brandon says, how can we
give it a shot.
Beversluis?
Hey, that sounds good to me.
I'm trying to do it phonetically there. I don't know if that's right. Beversluis? We don't have to get bogged down here. How can we talk about Mike Keith on the day the Titans decided to draft Cam Ward? Did they decide to draft Cam Ward? I don't know that. I know that that's trending in the right direction. I know that their fan base is going to riot if they draft anybody but Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick, but there was nothing definitive made. Hell, Cleveland might trade up and draft Cam Ward. We'll get to some Adam Schefter audio here in just a second, because we're not going to completely ignore that, because there was a story today. Brandon Allen become the backup quarterback, or coming in here to compete with Will Levis to be the backup quarterback of the Tennessee Titans in 2025. But this is honestly bigger local news as far as I'm concerned. As you look at all the different things that you have at your disposal, who would you have picked to be Mike Keith's replacement? It's your 2 Rivers Ford take. As always, it's presented by the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Go to 2 Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at 2riversford.com. Quality American-made Ford vehicles and award-winning customer service. Brandon says, I nailed it, Bert. Eat it. In the comment section, 2 Rivers Ford will nail it for you too when you go online to 2riversford.com, or when you go out and visit them at the dealership. They are the South's most trusted Ford dealer for a reason. Who would you have replaced Mike Keith with? Now, I said it on the front end. There's no replacing Mike Keith. It's going to be, I don't envy the person who's stepping into that broadcast booth. And eventually, I think, time will just, I don't know if it's true that time heals all wounds, but you'll get used to it after a while, because Mike Keith's gone. Not gone. He's just in Knoxville, but he's not going to be doing your games for the Titans anymore. David Lee says, I'm in Los Angeles, so we only get the station announcers. I only heard Keith when watching replays, but still, Mike Keith's voice is iconic. The Music City Miracle, there are no flags on the field, all these different things. I know people that have that, I know that people that have used Mike Keith broadcast calls in their wedding proposal. I know people who have a Music City Miracle presentation at their wedding. I mean, Mike Keith has a cult following because he's been doing this for damn near 3 decades. So it's no small thing. B. French says he would like Bert. to replace the voice of the Titans. Joe Fowler just says Taylor. I don't know if he's talking about, I don't know which Taylor he's referencing. Brian says Lucas Panzica. A lot of love for Lucas in the comments. Randy Howard says Lucas, he would kill it. And Lucas, Lucas was very, I'll let him talk about it tomorrow because, I like to poke fun at Lucas, but I do think he would have killed the game's part of it. But based on the criteria that they were hiring on, Lucas has never done NFL play-by-play on ever. He's never done college football play-by-play, as far as I know. And those were two things that were very important to the Titans in hiring this position. So it's not that Lucas wouldn't have crushed it. It's just they weren't going to hire somebody who's never done NFL football games or major college football games to be the next voice of the Titans. They couldn't replace Mike Keith with somebody whose resume was lacking, whether that would have been Lucas or anybody, because I'm sure hundreds of people, I'm sure thousands of people sent in applications to do this job. But, that you have to have a certain kind of resume to get one of these positions, and particularly these positions, because like I said, I'll let Lucas talk about it for himself tomorrow, but I was fairly confident he wasn't going to get an interview. And that's not because he's not good. I mean, he knows that I think, maybe he doesn't know that I think the world of him as a play-by-play broadcaster, but Lucas is genuinely like a really good broadcaster. And I think he's got the right energy. I think he's got the right vocal variation for it. And I think he's pretty mechanically sound. Not that I know shit about play-by-play, but like when I listen to Lucas, he's good. But I didn't think he was going to get an interview because his resume does not yet include, like I said, major college football or the NFL. And I'm sure there's a great many people who applied that didn't have that on their resume that were hopeful about it. But ultimately, they decided on two candidates that they were most considering and one who I think is most going to get the job. So your Two Rivers Ford take, who would you have picked to replace Mike Keith? A lot of love for Lucas Panzica in the comment section. Eric Davis says Will Compton. Yeah, Will doesn't do that. Also, they would not hire Will. Brandon Connor says, why should we want somebody from the Jaguars to do our play-by-play calls? They are the enemy. Who gives a shit, man? Like you guys, it's like athletes. When you get bent out of shape when an athlete changes the team, this is a job. It's not that deep. I mean, and we'll get into the candidates because one of the candidates is currently employed by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I mean, who gives a shit? Who cares if he's a Jags fan, if he's good at this? Like, I know some of you guys give me a hard time because I'm not a Titans fan, but like, I don't know, you want a bunch of fanboys running around. As long as people are good at the jobs, who cares? You hire the most qualified person, not the person who panders to you the most. That's kind of where I'm at with it. Seth Perrigan says Hutton would be good. Jonathan Hutton would be good, but also Hutton, I don't think has ever had, as far as I know, play-by-play experience that was more than high school football. As far as I know, Jonathan Hutton's play-by-play experience was high school football, and that's, he's obviously got more years of experience doing it. I know he's doing the MyTV 30 stuff for a while. I know he did the high school football state championships and things like that. It's not that deep. We need to hire qualified panderers, says Jaron Lockridge. Now, I do agree that, you would ideally like somebody who is a fan of the team if they're good at the job. But just because they work for the Jags, if they're good enough for the job to do the job, then I wouldn't get bent out of shape about that. Kent says, give me Charles Davis. Charles Davis isn't a play-by-play guy. He's an analyst. Those are two different jobs. Jeremy Dowdy says Hutton would have been on the short list if he hadn't left the zone. That's not true. Because Hutton was on the short list, and Hutton just, he made the final three. He just didn't make the final two. So they didn't, based on my understanding, and I'm sure if you tweeted Hutton or if you tune into the Outkick show that him and Chad are doing or whatever the case, I bet he would tell you pretty honestly, if he wanted to have an honest conversation about this, that I don't think the zone really even factored in to this. The zone wasn't, by the way, the zone wasn't involved. Like I, as an employee of the zone and somebody who covers the team, like I know for a fact that the zone did not meddle in this. Lucas applied, Will applied, but that's about it. The zone doesn't have, by the way, the zone doesn't have any say in who the Titans hire. That's a Titans job, not a Cumulus broadcasting job. Cumulus corporately is who owns 104.5 The Zone and all the other stations that are in our building. But yeah, no, The Zone has nothing to do with Hutton. Again, Hutton made the final 3, but he did not make the final 2, which is where we're at this point in time. And I think that there's one, right? I think that there's one name that it's going to end up being. So who are these names? We'll get to them here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime Show is presented by TrueMath Fitness in the Gulch. Go to TrueMathFitness.com. Get your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled or repeated. Just the best in the business at Two Rivers Ford, at TrueMath Fitness. TrueMath Fitness is the best. I'll be there tomorrow at 7 a.m. in just less than 12 hours from now. TrueMathFitness.com for more information. Your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. Always go with their group fitness options or the personal training, or just work out as you please. Get a membership. They have a great open gym facility. TrueMathFitness.com for more information. Okay, so who is Eric Alonso says, what about Hunk? Joe Hunk to do play-by-play? Have you heard that, man? I mean, respectfully, Joe Hunk's a nice guy, but nope. No way in hell. I can't. And I've always given Hunk shit about this, but like that voice is not his real voice. Like I don't know why he projects the voice the way that he does, and he's a very nice man and he works very hard, and I think he is an aspiring play-by-play guy, but listen to that. That's absolutely not, under no circumstances, respectfully. And Joe knows that. I mean, I don't say that to be cruel or mean or anything like that, but like just talk normal. Never understood the grading that he does to his own voice. I know a lot of people accuse me of having a fake radio voice. I wish this was fake, but I'll take it. It's how I pay my mortgage. So the two names that I'm hearing about the Titans radio job, and specifically the Titans play-by-play job, because I do think that there are going to be some evolving pieces and parts with everything that's going on there. I know that Coach Mack is expected back, and Ramon Foster is expected back on the sidelines. I think a lot of the broadcasting pieces and parts might shift around, but we'll let those things come to fruition as we move forward. But the two names that I've heard are Taylor Zarzour, and I think the first time, I'm going to have to go back and look at my texts, because I know Jared brought this up today too, which, let's see. I'm not going to be able to find this conveniently. I should have had it pulled it up. Maybe I'm spelling it incorrectly. It's Zazour. Yeah, I definitely didn't spell it correctly. So I can go back and find it at some point in my text. But it's been a couple of months since we started to hear that name floated. And really, that was kind of one of the primary names the whole way through. So Taylor Zarzour of the SEC Network and PGA Tour Radio, I believe, is the outlet. Golf Channel. He does a lot of stuff for Golf Channel. He does also work for PGA Tour Radio. That's right. So Taylor Zarzour, SEC Network broadcaster, Golf Channel broadcaster, PGA Tour Radio, and then Jacksonville Jaguars senior reporter JP Shadrick, who has also done work for Westwood One, Jaguars Radio Network, Jaguars.com, Touchdown Radio Network, Sky Sports NFL in the United Kingdom, PGA Tour, international television partners, and social channels, all of that according to his LinkedIn profile, which I looked up today. He's done NFL and major college football play-by-play, so he had a good enough resume to at least apply for the job, and certainly he made it a fair way through the process. I think that Taylor Zarzour is going to be who they ultimately hire. I think that, Mike Keith is a tough act to follow, but I do think when you hear, SEC fans will know Taylor Zarzour. He's been calling games on the network for years.
2nd and 15, Mertz pumps over the middle, Pearsall, touchdown Gators! There is a flag down back where Mertz threw the ball.
So that is Taylor Zarzour on the call for one SEC Network game. Here's another Taylor Zarzour highlight.
They are. Can this be right on our screen? At the bottom right, can you circle the down and distance for everyone right now? Is this correct?
Do not adjust your sets.
And they'll run it on 2nd and 59. And there goes Noel, and he gets back a big chunk of it up to the 38-yard line. That's a pickup of 25 on 2nd and 59. And there are no flags on the field at the end of the third.
How about that? A little taste of no flags on the field. A little Mike Keith call back. So that is the voice of Taylor Zarzour, who I expect to be your next play-by-play voice, and he is certainly one of the two finalists on it. Here's also what I know. They haven't offered him officially. There's a lot of logistics to work out, because here's the complicated part. Well, I'll tell you the complicated part, because I saw somebody ask a question about it. And it's a good question. It's a good question worth asking about this role and whether they're going to just straight up replace Mike Keith with one person, which I'll tell you right now that they're not. But we will get into this together right after I remind you that the Primetime Show is presented by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage, GaryAshton.com. Your dream address without the stress. The intel edge you need to succeed can be found at GaryAshton.com. All right. So with everything that we've heard about this, here's what I know so far. As of today, because I followed up on this, Titans haven't offered him yet. There's mutual interest. As he is a finalist, they've had good conversations. So I don't think he's going to give up the SEC network or PGA. I don't think that he's going to give up one of his other jobs. Now, maybe he gives up one job and takes the Titans job and does one of the other things. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's a logistically complicated thing, which is why I think they're working that out. I don't know if they would have made an offer if he was just available right away. I think the fact that he's a commodity is one of the reasons that the Titans want him. They want somebody who's a professional and somebody whose name is recognizable in this part of the country. And Taylor Zarzour is. But it's complicated, right? He does play-by-play for college football and college baseball for the SEC network. He does PGA Tour radio. He does Golf Channel stuff. And I don't think that and again, what I've told and what assumptions that I'm going to make, maybe I shouldn't make so many assumptions, but this is an assumption that I'm comfortable making. They're not hiring one person to replace Mike Keith. I think based on the conversations that I've had, they're going to hire an independent contractor, i.e. Taylor Zarzour. So I don't know if he's like a 1099 employee like I am for A to Z, for example. I used to be a full-time employee. I was A to Z's first full-time employee. And then when I got the Zone deal, it ended up being more beneficial for me to make the Zone my full-time employer and then be a 1099 contractor and keep my salary keep my pay at my salaried rate for A to Z, but then go 1099, which is, a tax situation that I work through every year. So Taylor Zarzour is probably going to be an independent contractor. Like, I don't think they're hiring a full-time person to come in here because Mike Keith was the vice president of broadcasting. He was an NFL team's vice president. And there are a couple of vice presidents, but like Rand Carthon was a vice president. Mike Keith was a vice president. These titles are not just thrown about. Mike Keith did a million different things. He traveled all over the tri-state area, basically, not just in Tennessee, but he'd go to Kentucky. They'd go to northern Alabama and Georgia, the Titans caravan stuff. Like Mike Keith would go speak at Rotary meetings. He'd go to Kiwanis clubs. He would go and speak at local high schools and high schools in the Tennessee area. Mike Keith would MC Titan season ticket holder events. He hosts podcasts and TV shows and radio shows and all manner of other things. Like Mike Keith did so much. What I know about the Titans had to figure out how much Mike Keith actually did. Like, because they just, Mike Keith just did his shit and handled his department. And he did it at such a high level, you never had to worry about it. Titans radio is one of the best products in the world. So what the Titans had to do, based on my understanding, is they had to do an internal audit. Okay, how much shit did Mike Keith actually do here? And how much is reasonably one person going to be able to take on? And the answer is you can't fill Mike Keith's job with one person because there's a million different things that he did under the umbrella of Mike Keith. So I think that in particular, the situation with the replacement is going to be an independent contractor, no matter who it ends up being. I think Zarzour, but we'll see. And then the other part of this, are they going to independently contract other people? Is Amy Wells going to be involved in that? I know it would mean a lot to Rhett Bryan to be a team employee. He's not a team employee right now. I'll let Rhett speak on this himself if he wants. And Amy, as they like, they're able to comment on their own situations. Maybe they would prefer to not. I would not pretend to speak for him. But, Rhett Bryan is a lifelong Titans fan. He's been the executive producer of Titans Radio for forever. And it would mean a lot for Rhett to be a team employee. And he's not a team employee. He's a Cumulus. He works for the same company that I do, Cumulus Media, and is the executive producer of Titans Radio through Cumulus Media. And obviously he gets paid to do the Titans Radio stuff. But it's not like Mike. Mike was a team employee. Mac is a team employee. And those things are different there. So yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with the rest of the role. I think that's probably still an evolving conversation. I don't know when they're going to announce Mike Keith's replacement, but Taylor Zarzour, and I did not know this, and that's because, and it's not to shit on on another sports talk radio station, because honestly, NSR, which is here locally in town, I've never actually heard their broadcasts. I know it's an AM frequency, and I'd be lying to you if I couldn't tell you last time I don't know that I've ever flipped to an AM radio frequency, and that's not to shit on another radio station. Like I've never done it. I've never listened. But apparently Taylor Zarzour hosted a morning show in Nashville for WNSR. That's a pretty that's something that I did not know. So Taylor Zarzour at the start of his career, or towards the start of his career, before he went on to be SEC Network play-by-play guy and PGA Tour Radio Network and all these different things, he was doing local TV and then did a local radio show and then went on to do other things throughout the course of his career. So that's where I think they're headed. But like I said, as of this afternoon, when last I checked in, they had not made him an offer. Now, who's to say that they couldn't have offered him by now, since the last time I had a couple of phone conversations earlier this afternoon. But I think he's the leader in the clubhouse. We'll see what they end up deciding to do. So I think he could do worse. I really do. I mean, he's a professional broadcaster, and it's going to be tough to replace Mike Keith. B. French says Kevin Harlan is too expensive for this team. Man, Kevin Harlan makes money hand over fist. Kevin Harlan's got 1,000,001 jobs. He does NFL. He does NFL on TV. He does NFL on radio. He does NFL, basketball. He does basketball on the radio. He does basketball on TV. Kevin Harlan's got a full plate. He's doing all right. He doesn't need. I mean, I guess you could make somebody a Godfather offer, but Kevin Harlan is not going from doing national NFL radio broadcast to just doing one team. I would be surprised by that. Ben Hall says, if you're the Titans, is a quarterback the only way to get excitement back? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, and excitement doesn't mean anything if you don't have a plan. I think that they think they have a plan. We'll see if their plan works or not. That, of course, remains to be seen at this point in time. So as we move forward through the rest of this, I don't know what the timeline is for them. I don't think that they're giving out any hard timelines right now. I do think that there's going to be a couple of different changes here, but as far as Mike Keith goes, you could do worse than Taylor Zarzour. And I haven't heard, to be completely honest with you, I did not look up JP Shadrick's body of work. I looked up his LinkedIn before I wrote this afternoon for A to Z Sports and before we got on here. So maybe JP Shadrick is just as good, if not better. I personally did not seek out his work, but these are two guys who have a lot of experience, and you could do worse than either of them. So that's where we're at this point in time. Chosen says we were rooting for Lucas to get the job, but understand they want somebody bigger after all the team sucks. Yeah, listen, Lucas can talk. We'll talk about this on the radio show tomorrow, and I'll let Lucas talk for himself, because I know the last thing that Lucas would want is me talking for Lucas. So let's move on and let's talk a little bit about free agency, because you did sign Brandon Allen, who has previous experience with Brian Callahan, and they had a couple of different options. They ultimately went with somebody they knew. Now, the question is, are they going to draft Cam Ward? And what does that tell us? So the question that I'm going to ask you on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch, what does the Brandon Allen signing mean for the Titans in the draft? Let me know, and we'll talk about it together on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Look at this, Bert. Carrie B says, who watched Madagascar last night? How could you not, after hearing Bert play a couple of songs from the Madagascar soundtrack yesterday on the radio show? It's the best way to put me in a better mood. That and ABBA. It's impossible, even for me, who has a bad attitude about a lot of things. It is impossible for me to be in a bad mood when I hear ABBA. It's just the vibes. All right. So with everything that you've got going on right now, what does it mean that you signed Brandon Allen today about the draft? Let me know in the comment section on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. We'll talk about it together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Bart Durham Injury Law. BartDurham.com is where you go if you've experienced an automobile accident or personal injury and you feel like you deserve to be paid. Go to Bart Durham and they will get you in position to succeed. You can check out their case results. You can learn more about their various areas of practice. You can get a free consultation online at bartdurham.com today. All right. So what does it mean that you signed Brandon Allen? What do you think it means that you signed Brandon Allen? None of us know definitively what it means, but we can take some guesses and still have a good time with that. Curtis says rookie quarterback loading. Randy Howard says means Levis has 1 foot out the door. Jack Tripper says he thinks it means it's over for the Mayo Man. Titans Kyle says it has to mean they're leaning towards a rookie quarterback. I would be stunned. If Cam Ward wasn't the number 1 overall pick. The question is, who is going to be making that number 1 overall pick? The Titans currently own it, but that doesn't mean that things can't change.
Zero chance that Cam Ward is going to make it to the Giants at 3. Just not going to happen. So I expect that Cam Ward will be the number 1 pick in the draft, whether that's Tennessee or Cleveland or the New York Giants making that pick. And this is all part of the process, right? You begin to evaluate all these guys. Teams do deeper and deeper dives into them. From my perspective, I'm talking to more and more people before the combine, at the combine, after the combine. And I'm just telling you, like, the conversations I've had have convinced me that Cam Ward will be the number 1 pick, and certainly the first quarterback off the board, and certainly I think the number 1 overall guy.
So I agree with Adam Schefter. I think Cam Ward is going to be the number 1 overall pick. I have no idea who's going to make that number 1 overall pick. The Aaron Rodgers domino is still out there, holding the Giants, the Steelers, and potentially the Vikings a bit hostage here. Who the Giants bring in at quarterback, or who, if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, that may force them to trade up for number 1 overall. Cleveland. Who the hell is playing quarterback in Cleveland, if not Cam Ward? I don't know what it would cost or what the actual offer would be to go from 2 to 1, but if Cleveland traded number 2 for number 1 and threw in a 2026 first-round pick, I'd take that deal. I think you'd have to take that deal. I think for 2 first-round picks in a quarterback draft where there's no consensus, or where the consensus is Cam Ward, but and I like Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward I think if the Titans pick Cam Ward number 1 overall, I would be totally good with it. Totally good with it. In fact, I think they almost have to save any semblance of this fan base's interest in this team. I think that they have to, but they don't actually have to. It just feels like they have to. And while I would be stunned if they decided to not, if they picked number 1 and didn't take Cam Ward, I would be stunned. I think Cam Ward is going with the number 1 overall pick. I do not know who's going to end up making that number 1 overall pick. And that is what remains to be seen. I thought we were going to sign Jameis Winston to be with Cam Ward. I don't think Brian Callahan wants anything to do with somebody like Jameis Winston, like the player that Jameis Winston is, not the person. I enjoy Jameis. Steve West says it means that they're drafting a quarterback for sure. For sure. Wouldn't, I think is what he means to type there. Would not bank on Ward, though. It's not like the new front office has exactly been making the most exciting moves. Oh, so what Steve is saying is, yeah, they could trade back and draft a quarterback later. It doesn't have to be Cam Ward. Seth says, will the number 1 pick be on the radio, Buck? Yeah, Titans radio is going to do first-round draft coverage for sure. I don't know if they're going to do day 2 and I think they're planning on doing like a draft recap show at some point with Rhett and Coach Mack, and I'm pretty sure Ramon. Bert, do you know if Ramon's going to be involved in the Titans radio draft broadcast? I don't know that for sure. I would assume, but I don't know that for sure. Right now, I actually haven't asked Ramon. I've asked Mac a couple of times, and I think they were still working out their plans. I know first-round draft coverage for sure. And here's the thing. If the Titans pick first overall, they can't go to commercial break when the Titans pick, which is typically the case every year. When I watch the draft coverage on NFL Network or ESPN, nobody wants to see the Titans on television, not even when they're picking, except when they're picking the number 1 overall pick. And even then, people will be like, Tennessee. Well, what's Cleveland and New York doing? That's how it goes. Seth says, oh, you mean like an interview? I mean, yeah, I'll interview him at some point. I'm sure I don't know if all the shows will interview him, but I mean, they're not contractually obligated to put him on the air with me, but we do training camp interviews every year. If they draft a quarterback, I'm going to assume that I'm going to do a quarterback interview. I bet 3HL will interview whoever they pick. Whoever they pick. I mean, every year we interview the draft picks. I've gotten away from And you know what? To be honest, I'm like if Cam Ward was drafted, I would want to interview Cam Ward, but I'm kind of moving away, and maybe it's just because the Titans don't have any players that are, I don't know, that like we stopped doing Titans player interviews about halfway through the season, and that's because they were terrible, and I don't want to make the players miserable, and a lot of times the interviews, all right, and I appreciate that they're willing to make the time, and that the Titans help me book the show with players, but like after a while, I remember talking to PR, just be like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. So maybe we do less player interviews, but obviously the number one overall pick, if it's a quarterback, I mean, if they draft Will Campbell, the 5th overall in a trade back scenario, I'm probably okay. But yeah, I mean, if Cam Ward is picked by the team, I would do an interview with him at some point. I don't know if it would be the day after he's drafted or the week after or the month after or training camp, whatever. But yeah, we would do an interview at that point. Iro says Levis and Allen, Buck, Titans quarterback issue is solved. Levis and Allen, no. That would be a disaster. I want nothing to do with that at all. That would be awful. The Will Levis component is interesting here because, like, I mean, either you beat out Brandon Allen. I mean, they'll try and trade him regardless, I think. I don't know that for sure, but I would think. I mean, they benched him. I don't think they want anything. I don't think Brian Callahan wants anything to do with it. And I don't think he's at a point where you can trust him to be a reliable backup. And Brandon Allen's been around long enough to do just that. So what I think with the Titans and what it means, I think that they have to take a quarterback. They might not agree. So I'm not going to speak for them, but speaking for me, they have to take a quarterback. Otherwise, this fan base is going to shit. If it hasn't already. All right, weekend bounce back. Who needs to bounce back most in sports this week? Let's talk about it. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch in the comment section. While you do that, I'll remind you that Zen Sports makes the primetime show possible. ZenSports.com is where you go for more information. $100 on your no danger first wager. Terms and conditions do apply when you use that promo code ATOZTN in the comment section, or rather in the app. Promo code ATOZTN. Must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789 at Zen Sports. No, you're not going to put Levis on the practice squad. You would lose Levis for nothing. And even if you trade Levis for a 7th-round pick, at least you get something out of that. You don't want to just let somebody have him. And you're certainly not going to cut him. You'd have to eat money at that point. Aaron Goff wants to know, where is Tannehill? I mean, he's here. He's local. His kids are in school here. He plays golf with Ben Jones and Ryan Suckup and Brett Kern on a pretty regular basis, from what I understand. So he's chilling. I would not pick up the phone if I was Ryan Tannehill and the Titans called me. Hell no. Not after the way that my Titans career ended here, and not after the way the Titans, and I get it. He screwed up. He screwed up that Bengals playoff game. Nobody's disputing that. But Titans fans were really cruel after that to the second most successful quarterback in this franchise's era, in the Titans era. Warren Moon. To me, it's Warren Moon, Steve McNair, and then Ryan Tannehill. But in the Titans era, it's Steve McNair and Ryan Tannehill. And I thought Titans fans were pretty cruel to him at the end. So I tell you guys to kick rocks if I was Ryan Tannehill at this point. All right. So B French says Indiana Hoosiers need a bounce back. They got their ass handed to them today. I'm happy. I'm glad that they lost. I don't want to watch them anymore this season. I'm glad Mike Woodson's gone. I'm sure I'll be disappointed with who they hire. I'm sure I'll hate it. I'm sure my basketball team will be bad again next year. But I'm happy. That's not a bounce back. That's great success. Get them off my screen. Send them to the NIT and let us be done with them at this point in time. I think that when you look at all the different things that the Titans have, or rather that you could pick from in sports, I think that the Aaron Rodgers component is always worthy of bounce back. Aaron Rodgers just continues to drag things around, and the quarterback landscape is something that's just brutal at this point. But Bert has selected something for bounce back. Oh, it's a Nashville SC situation. Let's go and see what Bert has pulled from the local professional soccer club. I love the in the middle of that. I don't know what the mascot's called. What is it? It's like Tempo or maybe Tempo. Tempo is the name of the coyote. I don't know. But that's the Nashville SC mascot, just eating shit in the middle of a pregame hype sesh. And he recovered nicely and he bounced back and he said, my bad. All those things. Well, he didn't say anything because mascots aren't allowed to speak. But it made me laugh. Tempo needs a bounce back. All right. It's going to do it for us tonight. Have a great weekend. Radio, well, I'll talk to most of you on the radio show tomorrow from 10 to 1, last day of the SEC tournament. Well, last day that the show is at the SEC tournament. Obviously, the SEC tournament will continue through Sunday. Tennessee gets going tomorrow. Auburn, Alabama. Should be a lot of fun basketball. Been a lot of fun basketball in the first couple of sessions as well, but we will see how the rest of it goes, and hopefully Tennessee can at least, acquit themselves well and not just lose the first round of the SEC tournament that way. We will see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone.